First of all, I would like to give you the oral transmission of a practice on Amitabha. After the class, after the chanting, I would like to make a short announcement to all of our Sangha over here. So let's continue with the Surangama Sutra. Previously, Ananda got scolded by the Buddha, where the Buddha said that it is unreasonable what you've stated. How could it be your mind? Where Ananda said that the watcher, the one who is searching for the mind, is the mind itself. And then the Buddha said that that's not true. How could that be the mind? In fact, such kind of deluded mind has already covered our true nature of mind. And because of that, because of such delusion, it has caused you from beginningless time to your present life to recognize a thief as your son. And that is why you've been circling in samsara, in this wheel of life and death, since beginningless time. And then Ananda started to say to the Buddha, saying that, "World-honored one, I am the Buddha's favorite cousin. It is because my mind loved the Buddha." Over here, the word love is a sign of respect and veneration. Therefore, he said that he loved the Buddha. And previously, it is stated that Ananda, first of all, got attracted by the appearance of the Buddha, and not because of the mind of the Buddha. Rather, he got attracted by the look and the characteristic of appearance of the Buddha. So over here, in fact, this love is really important. So let's continue to see how he continued to explain it. He said that it is because of my mind loved the Buddha that I was led to leave home life, and it is my mind that not only makes offering to the Tathagata, but also in passing through lands as many as the grains of sand in Ganges River to serve all Buddhas and good and wise advisors and good spiritual friends, and in marshaling great courage to practice every difficult aspect of the Dharma. I always use this mind. So Ananda stated that, in fact, not only that I make offering to the Tathagata, I've made the offering to the innumerable Tathagatas and Buddhas in numerous lands. And he made this great courage to practice every difficult aspect of actions of the Dharma on the path of Bodhi, including serving and attend the teacher and a good spiritual friend. In fact, it's not easy to attend teacher. So he's been then practicing the very difficult aspect of all different kinds of actions to serve all the Buddhas and good spiritual friends. And he stated that, well, I've been using this mind to make offering and to make such courageous aspiration to practice all the difficult aspects of the Dharma. And then the Buddha said that, and then the Buddha said that that is not your mind. And Master Changshui, he quoted from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, where it says that to make the aspiration of Bodhi, to make the aspiration of bodhicitta is not the Buddha's mind, it is not the Buddha nature. In fact, to attain enlightenment, the genuine, the true cause of enlightenment is Buddha nature. But to make the aspiration of the Bodhi is rather a favorable condition that would make attribution to it. And then Ananda said that let it be loving the Buddha or serving the Buddha and serving the good spiritual friends and marshaling the great courage to practice every difficult situations. In fact, this is based on my mind. Without such mind, then I won't be able to do any of these. And even if I am slandering the Dharma and eternally withdrawing my good roots, over here, make sure that you understand that this is not just this just not only refer to Ananda, it shows that in fact, if anyone slander the Dharma or if anyone withdraw their good roots, if they were to become a ichantika, which means that the ones who completely cut off their good roots, the kind of sentient beings who are considered as the ichantikas, the ones who've completely withdrew their good roots. This is also because of this mind. So from the positive aspect, the making service and making offering to the Tathagatas and making all kinds of good practices is based on the mind. And from the negative aspect, the slandering of the Dharma and withdrawing good roots, this is all because of this mind. If this is not my mind, then I have no mind, and I am the same as a clod of earth or a piece of wood. I would be then without any kind of conscience. I would be without mind. Isn't that terrifying? So Ananda started to say that this is quite a terrifying thing. Then who is the one who makes the aspiration to generate a bodhicitta? Who is the one to practice good for the sentient beings? Then in that way, this world is rather quite terrifying, isn't it? According to the Shastra of No Mind of Bodhidharma, out of all the 10 questions, one of the questions that says that if we were not having any mind, then how could we know all the truth of all phenomena? And then it gives a story. There's a story that is said, the analysis that's given in that answer, where it says that the drum, the celestial drum, in fact, it doesn't have any sentient. However, the sound of it would still propagate the Dharma. So over here, in fact, it is not that without mind is bad, but then Ananda got really terrified because of this statement. Then why does the Tathagata say this is not my mind? If I were not to have something that is so bright, that is luminous, So previously, Ananda got scolded and Ananda got reprimanded by the Buddha, and he then got really confused and he started to question the Tathagata, saying that, then why does Tathagata say this is not my mind? And he got very frightened. He said that I'm startled and frightened, and not one member of the great assembly is without doubt. In some of the commentaries, it is said that Ananda is actually representing lots of mundane beings' ideas, as well as some of the Shravakas. So in different situations, Ananda would manifest or would present himself in such a way and ask questions. And another commentary stated that in fact Ananda really understood what the Buddha wanted to teach, and therefore he would try to ask the correct questions. On top of that, Ananda knows all the mundane beings' mind, therefore he would pose such questions so that they would understand, they would receive the answers from the Buddha. Lots of people, mundane people, would feel that if there were no mind, then there's no telling of there's no differentiation between the positive and the negative karma that is created. So it says that then all of us are getting very much frightened and have lots of confusion about it. If you were to say that there's no mind, then are you saying that it is void, complete, empty, without anything? So Ananda continued to pose the question by saying that the compassionate Buddha, I really hope that world-honored one will then regard us with a great compassion and instruct those who have not yet awakened. And because without your instruction, then we won't be able to understand it. According to the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, it is said that in some of the, in fact, it says that if you do not, the Mahayana Sutra are just like this. For the wise, they are the ambrosia of immortality, and for the foolish, who do not understand the Buddha nature, when taken, then they become poison. So all kinds of Mahayana Sutras would be understood by the wise ones, and they would understand the teachings of emptiness, of luminosity. But the foolish ones, they do not understand the Buddha nature within everyone, within all the sentient beings. Therefore, the teachings that's given in the Mahayana Sutra, which is ambrosia by nature, but by the foolish ones, even if they take it, they won't be able to digest or take it properly. Therefore, such ambrosia would become a poison for them. Let's just contemplate upon those people who listened to the teachings of emptiness and they got really frightened and won't be able to accept it. And even if they listen to it, they don't understand it completely. So that's quite terrifying. And then the Buddha started to give instructions to to Ananda as well as the great assembly. So it says that then at that time Buddha gave the great assembly as well as Ananda instructions, wishing to cause their mind to enter the state of patience with non-production of dharma, or the forbearance of the uncreated. So in the hope of the sentient beings would give rise to the state or enter into the state of the uncreated, or forbearance of the uncreated. What is this forbearance of the uncreated? in fact, it is stated in the Sutra of Heap of Jewels. It says that the bodhisattvas who have achieved the patience, endurance of the uncreated, which means the forbearance of the uncreated, because they can endure the truth that all dharmas have neither birth nor death. Once you understand this teaching, then you won't retrogress on the path. This is taught in the Great Heap of Jewels Sutra. All the dharmas are devoid of all the dharma are has no birth nor no death. But not everyone could accept it right away. Just as the story of Atisha's disciple goes, where Atisha's disciples would listen to the teaching of the egolessness from Atisha at first, and they were very happy about receiving such teaching. And then once Atisha gave them the teaching of the neither birth nor death, that is the truth of all dharmas, they cannot accept it at all. And then they covered their ears and ran away from Atisha. So, over here, it says that the Buddha, wishing to cause all the great assembly as well as Ananda to enter into the state of this forbearance of uncreated, therefore he started to give the teaching. If all sentient beings could enter into that state, then their mind would be steady, would have a certainty in such view, certainty in the Dharma. So over here, then Ananda gave the teaching. Over here, the Buddha gave the teaching to Ananda as well as the Great Assembly, the most profound teaching of emptiness. From the lion's seat, then the Buddha rubbed Ananda's crown. In fact, the Buddha was sitting on the lion's seat or the lion's throne. When someone sits on the lion's throne, it shows that it is a teaching of the Mahayana teaching. It's the roar of the lion, which is fearless. And over there, on the throne of lion's seat, and then the Buddha rubbed Ananda's crown and said to him, why did the Buddha rub the Ananda's crown? It in fact shows that this teaching is quite profound, and in order to console Ananda, because previously the Buddha already scolded Ananda, saying that how very silly of you, how could you still not understand it? And over here, then the Buddha rubbed Ananda's crown and consoled him and make him feel a little more comfortable. And then he started to give him the profound teaching. Rubbing someone's crown, in fact, is a tradition in Tibetan Buddhism, and lots of people used to slander that what's the point of rubbing someone's crown. In fact, we can see from the sutra, during the Buddha's time, the Buddha would rub someone's crown and give them blessings and give them strength. In front of the whole great assembly, the Buddha scolded Ananda, and then the Buddha didn't want Ananda to get too terrified or to run away. So the Buddha then rubbed Ananda's crown and consoled him by saying that, don't be so upset, don't be so heartbroken because I scolded you. And then the Buddha continues to give this profound teaching. The profound teaching that's given over here is similar to the ones given in Vajrayana teaching. But it's a little bit difficult, so pay attention, be very attentive. Maybe it's not as difficult as the 7 attempts of searching for the mind, but it's a little bit difficult, not too much. So, the Tathagata started to give the teaching. And he said that the Tathagata has often said that all dharmas that arise are only manifestations of the mind. All causes and effects, the worlds as many as the fine motes of dust, come into being cause of the mind. So all the causes of all the phenomena world, as big as the universe, as small as the particles, they are no other than the mind. It is, in fact, because of the mind. From the Chittamatra school, that is from the Chittamatra, that is the mind-only school. They stated that everything is the manifestation of the mind. In fact, you understand it if you were to study the mind-only school, or if you studied the Mahaati's teaching or part of the Tantrayana's teaching, you would be able to understand it. The beauty, the ugly, the happy, and the sad. In fact, everything that manifests in this world, and they are connected to the mind. So, this world is there because of either someone's mind or the collective mind that is of all the sentient beings over there. So he started saying that, in fact, everything has something to do with mind. And then the Buddha continued to tell Ananda, saying that when all the things in this world, including blades of grass and the strands of silk threads, so you can say silk and thread is something very thin, something really thin and something really fragile. So let it be a blade of grass or strands of silk threads are examined at their fundamental source. Each is seen to have substance and a nature. When you are searching for its nature, searching for its source, in fact, you'll be able to see that every dharma, everything, from the aspect of inanimate objects, they have substance and have a nature. Even something very small, like a blade of grass, is something very insignificant, like a particle. They all have such substance and a nature. And even when we look at empty space, even such empty space has a name and has an appearance. And it has its characteristic, such kind of state of unobstructed. Even the space has it. Even the space has such kind of characteristics. And this kind of characteristics of the other kind of characteristics is rather a little bit different than the ones of the created or the conditioned. It has the characteristic of unobstructed, and it is then not blocking anything. So that's the characteristic of space. And over here, then he continued to say that if you were to say that such kind of subtle, such kind of clear and wonderful and pure bright mind be less than all of those inanimate ones that's stated above, how could there be? So the Buddha said that I'm not saying that mind doesn't have any essence. In fact, when you look at the essence of all the things that's even inanimate, even that is ungraspable like the sky, we could consider they have a substance and have characteristic. How could you say that mind doesn't have such essence? So this mind that is clear, that is very rare and wonderful and all manifesting and pure and bright mind, this kind of mind, how could there be no or without any substance? In fact, this part is more clear in the Tibetan language translation. What it says is that since everything else has substance and a nature, then this mind that is clear, that is rare, that is all manifesting, then how could such a mind doesn't have any essence, doesn't have any substance and nature? So, if everything else has such kind of substance, such kind of nature, then how could you say that mind doesn't have anything existing at all? How could you say that a mind is completely void? That is not reasonable. So, according to some commentaries, it is stated that this part of teaching given by the Buddha is rather a comfort that is given from the Buddha to Ananda, where he comforts Ananda by stating in such a way, and so that Ananda wouldn't be completely terrified. And then the Buddha continues and saying that, and yet now, as you listen to my Dharma teaching, it is because of sound that you are able to make distinctions. Since yesterday you said that if you grasp firmly the knowledge which comes from your discrimination between feeling and seeing as your true mind, it should have its own nature independent of all sense data such as form, smell, and taste and touches. This is what you stated yesterday, isn't it? As we studied from yesterday's part about how the Buddha, how Ananda then states that this mind that is able to discriminate as well as to watch. So this is the mind, isn't it? And then the Buddha then restated it, saying that if you insist that nature which knows and observes and is aware of distinctions is the mind, then apart from all the forms, smells, tastes, and touches, apart from the working of all the defiling objects, that mind should have its own complete nature. If your mind is apart from form, smell, taste, and touches, the four kinds of objects. In fact, there are the 6 sense objects in total, but over here it talks only about the 4 out of them. 4 out of the 6 objects, sense objects. So the Buddha then restated again by saying that since you've already stated that the mind could observe and is aware of distinctions and also could make distinctions and is aware and could observe, then there must be a vividly clear mind that exists by itself, apart from the 4 kinds of sense objects. Since you are listening to my teaching, Ananda, is it because of the sound that you're able to make distinctions? Because sound is also a sense object. Since you're listening to my Dharma, you are aware of the sound sense object, and you are able to make your distinction that, oh, the Tathagata is giving a wonderful teaching. And when you're looking at the Tathagata, then it is because of the seeing object, sense object. And there are the taste object, sense object, and these are working together to then having this kind of function for you to make the distinctions. And if you could extinguish all seeing, hearing, awareness, and knowing, and maintain an inner composure, the shadow of your discrimination of dharmas would remain. Then your mind must be there. And they're like the shadow of your discrimination of dharma. That is the sense object of consciousness. They're the shadow of such. When such kind of object appear in front of your consciousness, they're just like a image that then reflect in front of your consciousness. Do you understand what I said? When there are the different kinds of objects that appear in front of you, then your inner consciousness is making such kind of focus, and they are no other than the shadows that's reflected in front of your consciousness. And this, in fact, is not the ultimate teaching. This is not the ultimate understanding of the mind. And over here, the Buddha gave the teaching that the 5 sense objects and the 6 consciousness, and the 7th, that is the contaminated understanding. In fact, all of these are all deluded mind. All of the phenomena that appears in front of our 5 faculties and the phenomena that is the object of the consciousness is also deluded. When you look inwardly, the clear aspect of such kind of observation is also deluded. That is the 7th consciousness. And on the 8th consciousness, the most essence of it is, in fact, that is the alaya, that is the essence of the essence, and that it cannot be recognized by our conceptual mind. And you cannot recognize it from the created or the conditioned dharma. You can only understand it from the uncreated aspect or from the forbearance of the uncreated, as we previously talked about. In fact, what is uncreated? Uncreated doesn't have any birth nor death. Previously, Ananda, when he listened to the teaching of the Buddha, and because of the sense object of hearing, he was able to make a distinction. He was able to find out where the Buddha was and what he was talking about. But if there was no sound sense object, then there is no consciousness that would perceive it, and there was no consciousness that could perceive it, and then where's the mind? And that is why in Vajrayana we talk about at the moment that you're grasping towards the object. In fact, that is not it. And the one that is being still, and that is not it either. But it is the naked something over there. I cannot be too explicit over there because lots of you have not received the empowerment. This is in fact really profound, and you should read into it. And if you were to contemplate upon it for a long period of time, you'll be able to recognize the nature of your mind. When I read into the commentaries of great masters from the past, I found that they were not too explicit in terms of the explanation of this part. I think it has to be connected with your own practice and your own observation and understanding. Lots of the teachings given in the Vajrayana teaching and not very much in the Sutrayana teachings is included over here in this teaching, over here in this part. This is the actual practice. This is the actual, the main part of the teaching.
这样的话呢，再说是这个，那外面的这些灭了以后不是真心的话，我内在的就是真在这个。
Then over here, Ananda first asked that if it was not the mind when I was perceiving, when I am observing or attaching to the external sense object, then what is it? In fact, it is called the solitary mind consciousness that is included in the sixth consciousness. And the sixth consciousness is not considered as the true nature of the mind. And there are the four aspects of this so-called solitary mind consciousness. The first one is the solitary mind consciousness in dissipation, and the second one in sanity, and the third one in dreams, and the fourth one is in samadhi. I remember the story over here. I met someone before who has a rather high social status, and then whenever his superior is in place and present, then he would be rather very quiet. And whenever the superior is not there, he would then talk a lot, and he used lots of filler words such as this. And usually I would listen and count how many of this he used. The previously one talked about how the inner abiding or the inner observation, where when you are thinking that you're abiding, when you are in such kind of peaceful and abiding state, you feel that this is it. Rather, in the Vajrayana teaching, it is called a very subtle conceptual thought. On the superficial area, or on the very coarse outlook, yes, maybe it is like a very tiny wave on top of an ocean, but it is still a conceptual thought that generated from the ocean. And then the Buddha continued to tell Ananda, saying that I do not insist or I do not force you to grant that it is not the mind. And he said that I'm not forcing you to agree with me, to say that this is not mine or this is the mind. But I encourage you to examine your mind in minute detail to see whether there is a discriminating nature apart from the objects of sense that would truly be your mind. So you should be very you should examine and scrutinize the details to see whether there is a discriminating nature apart from the object of sense. The next sentence is a little bit difficult to understand, where it says that you have to then reflect back to your own mind and think very carefully to see that if there is a discriminating nature apart from the object of sense, if there's the discriminating apart from the object of sense, that would truly be your mind. That's the first supposition, and the second one is if this discriminator has no substance apart from objects, then it is shadows of a discrimination of objects of mind.
那么这样的话呢，色则牵成这个分别影响，就是那么这样的话呢，就是实际上是你再可以这是什么呢？就是前尘的一个分别影响。
In fact, the conclusion that comes from such kind of supposition is that it is shadows of discrimination of object of mind. It is no other than an image that's reflected. In fact, there is no true objects of senses. They are no other than the shadows or reflections of discrimination of object of mind. And in this way, the objects are not permanent, since we already know that all the objects are not permanent. The four kinds of sense objects, as well as the object of phenomena. In fact, all of these five objects are not permanent. They would change, and they would pass out of existence. And then let's look at this mind that you think the mind that mind is that. Then the mind would be like hair on a tortoise or horns on a rabbit. In that case, your Dharma body, your Dharmakaya, would be extinguished along with it. Then who cultivates and attains patience with the non-production of dharmas? If you were to say that such kind of conceptual mind is the true nature of mind, then it doesn't make any sense. It just makes your mind disappear. In fact, I would consider that the one that is translated into Tibetan is easier to understand, and the teaching is more clear. So also some of the teachings are a little bit different. What it says is that if there is another mind other than the mind that perceives the objects of sense, if there is a mind that grasps onto the external phenomena, if there is a separate mind that grasps onto the phenomena, if this is your true mind, then this kind of mind since it is already apart from the sense object, then this mind would be a solid existence, would be of no existence, would be of non-existence. And then all the other perceptions that you've received, all the other kinds of sense objects, they're no other than shadows. And since this kind of shadows of objects of mind, they are impermanent, then your mind would be no other than a hair on a tortoise or horns on a rabbit. The Tibetan translation is a little bit different than the Chinese translation, so I hope that whenever you have time, you can read into this part of the passage and make a deep analysis of it. According to Master Oyi, he separated this passage into he separated this part into different passages according to different punctuations in the Chinese language. And he explained in such a way Since Ananda feels that whenever you're clinging towards the sense objects and when you're not clinging to the sense object, you feel that there's a watcher. There's a watcher, there's something that clings. The other day when we were studying the Vajrayana teaching, we said that you should watch the nature of the watcher. In fact, this kind of teaching is rather quite similar. And when we read this in words, especially this part in words in Chinese, it's rather a little bit difficult to understand. What it means is that the conceptual mind is a separate entity than the five sense objects, than the five objects of senses. Then all the objects of senses are just shadows, and therefore the entity of this mind is just like hair on a tortoise and horns on a rabbit. When we reach here, in fact, it already refuted the idea of how the previous six consciousness are not mind. According to Master O.E., he said that not only this is a refutation to the first six senses, it also talks about it also includes the seventh consciousness, and that would be the ego, the Atman, the soul. All of those are also refuted over here. Everything that is created by the conceptual mind, everything is included. Everything that is stated, including the ones that is stated by the heretics. So it could be refuted through the way that if objects of senses doesn't exist, then how could the perceiver of objects of senses be the true mind, or be the perceiver, be the genuine true nature? So I think this part really gives us the teaching to recognize this bright mind that we have. How do we recognize this mind? Through the impermanent way. This is rather very relative. How we should recognize it is to recognize its nature, because its nature is beyond. It is birthless and deathless, and the birthless and deathless is very similar, even exactly as how Vajrayana teaching is. When Ponso Rinpoche gave the teaching, and I think I also give the teaching of it, where I give the teaching that we have this kind of birthless and deathless nature of mind. However, right now, because we do not recognize it, we are then trapped and fettered. But once we recognize it, then it's completely different. However, we can look at it from a way that if the object is unconditioned, then how can we recognize it with such kind of conditioned way? In fact, another way of looking at it is that to look at the sky and look at how the clouds would gather and disperse in the sky. The sky doesn't change. No, we have not realized the true nature of the mind, but at least what we should see is that to see the bright nature of this mind, and to this part, in fact, is rather quite difficult, and the next part would be easier to understand.
下面就是这个时候阿难就是对这个大众啊，就是默然施舍，因为佛陀就是这样讲的。
To continue,
就是这个什么无常的心不是真心。
Ananda and everyone in the great assembly was speechless and completely astounded. After the Buddha gives such profound teaching, and everyone's very much speechless and very much in awe. On one hand, they have really nothing to say, and they couldn't speak of anything. And right away, because all of them understood it right away, therefore they feel very much surprised and feel that it is very profound. In the Tibetan version, in fact, it means speechless and in silence as well as in awe of such profound teaching. In the Chinese translation, it means at total loss. Total loss. And the Buddha said to Ananda, there are cultivators in the world who, although they realize the 9 successive stages of samadhi, do not achieve the extinction of outflows or become arhats. So over here it talks about the 9 kinds of stages of samadhi in this world. However, none of them could achieve the extinction of outflow of arhatship, of arhathood, all because they are attached to birth and death, false thinking, and such kind of delusion, and mistake it for what is truly real. But Ananda, you are pretty good, but you have not attained arhathood. However, through your samadhi, you have not entered into the true nature of your mind, and through your extensive studying, you have not entered into the understanding of birthless and deathlessness. Therefore, you are still have not become an arhat. According to Master Zixuan's commentary, it is stated that arhat over here refers to the great arhats, which then directs not the Shravaka arhats, rather the Mahayana arhats, the great arhats from first bhumi to the 7th bhumi. And they have. And Ananda had not attained the stage of such great arhathood, which means that the first to the 7th bhumi of bodhisattvahood, which extincted all the afflictions. In fact, the Buddha is also called the greatest arhat. Out of the 10 titles that he has, he is venerated by. All because they are attached to the birth and death, such kind of defiled thinking. And that is why now, although you are great learned and you have not realized the accomplishment of sagehood. And then Ananda started to sob again. When Ananda heard what the Buddha said, he again wept sorrowfully. Remember, he wept at the beginning when he encountered such an obstacle and brought back to in front of the Buddha. He then cried, and now he cried again. It is said in Chinese that a man does not shed his tears easily. But Ananda, I think he must be very heartbroken at that time. He cried for many times in front of the Buddha, but maybe in front of the Buddha is okay. Over there, then Ananda placed his 5 limbs on the ground and prostrate to the Buddha again and knelt on both knees, put his palms together and said to the Buddha, and he said that since I followed the Buddha and left home, what I have done is to rely on the Buddha's awesome spirit. In fact, I've been serving the Buddha, attended the Buddha. I've then renounced my family life, and I've been listening to the teaching of the Buddha, and I look really handsome. Lots of people like me, and I am trusted by the Buddha. So lots of such kind of advantages. And Ananda said that I have often thought that there's no reason for me to toil at cultivations, expecting that the Tathagata would bestow samadhi upon me. He thought that he doesn't really have to practice because look, Ananda is very handsome and he has all such kind of advantages, and he didn't think that he had to practice. He felt that he's very much at advantage, therefore he doesn't really have to practice. And he was expecting that Tathagata would bestow samadhi upon him. He thought that I don't need to practice. When the Tathagata blessed me, I would then right away click and got enlightened. Therefore, I don't have to toil at cultivation. And Ananda continued to say that I never realized that he could not stand in for me in a body and mind. And he said that I just realized that my own mind and my own body is mine. I have to take such authority of this, and I cannot completely rely on the Buddha. In fact, over here it points out the Buddha is the Buddha, Ananda is Ananda. So the close ones, that's to the great masters, the assistants, the staff members who are close to the masters, then I think you really should practice for your own as well. There's no way for the master to click and then right away you get enlightened, just as how Ananda cannot get enlightened because of the teaching of because of how close he is to the Buddha. Otherwise, look at Shakyamuni Buddha, the Shakyamuni clan. They really take care of each other. You can look at the stories of the Shakyamuni clan and how Shakyamuni Buddha treats his clans, other people in his clan. And over here, Ananda at first feel that, oh, I thought that I am so close to the Buddha, and I thought that I don't really have to practice, and since the Buddha really took care of me, therefore I can be taken care of by the Buddha, and I don't have to practice with such diligence. And now I really hate myself how I've been only being very diligent at cooking and making tea and. So over here through this story, everyone should practice. Thus I lost my original mind, and although my body has left the whole life, my mind has not entered the way, has not entered onto the path. I think Ananda spoke on behalf of a majority of us who has such appearance of renunciant of life, but their minds have not entered onto the path yet. And I am like the poor son who renounced his father and roamed around. If the poor son renounces his father and roam about, and that is such a pitiful situation that this poor son is in. Though Ananda is in front of the Buddha, he didn't practice diligently. Therefore, he is just like the poor son of a rich father, and gave up his father. And now the poor son is suffering on his own and enduring such suffering. Therefore, today I realize that although I am greatly learned, if I do not cultivate it, it is the same as if I had not learned anything. I have not learned anything, just as someone who only speaks of food will never get full. I think this is very similar to many of us who only heard the teaching but never practiced, never cultivated. According to the Avatamsaka Sutra, where it says that those who hear much of the Dharma but do not practice are like the poor who count day and night the treasure of others, but have no penny of their own. So lots of practitioners are just like that. They know how to talk, they know how to speak, they know how to pay lip service to the Dharma, but they never practice it. But through such kind of lip service, you won't be able to receive anything. There is nothing that would truly benefit you. It only gains your own arrogance. So in Larungar recently, we are going to have over 2 weeks long of retreat. And I hope people outside of Larungar, if you were to have time, then you should also practice along with us according to the same period of time. You can practice upon the Amitabha's practices as well as look at your own mind and practice, simply practicing retreat. I heard a majority of our Sangha members are keeping very diligent preparation before the retreat. I heard that all of our shops are empty and we're out of lots of necessities. I think it's important to keep the storage of food, but also I want to remind you, in fact, retreat is not the retreat of food. You do not practice for yourself. If you only eat and don't practice, then after 15 days, you'll be very much bloated and gain lots of weight. So I really hope that rather than gain weight, you should gain your practice and gain your insights. In terms of a place of practice, I feel that some of the places that we built for people's retreat huts and so on, I heard people's complaints by saying that those places that we built are rather quite small. Let's look at the abbots. The abbots are named as fangzhang in Chinese, which is actually a measurement of their rooms. It's about 3.3 meters, 3.3 square meter in size of a room, of a retreat room, and they would practice in it. And such kind of practitioners would be called the abbot or fangzhang. And now our homes, our retreat places are rather much bigger than those. Since your room is very small, then I think it's the best to keep your room very clean and very simple. I went to many retreat caves of great masters. Their caves are very small, including Longchenpa's cave in Garik Toga. His cave is very small, and if someone who's big and would sleep straight with their legs extended, I'm sure their legs would be outside of the cave. So you don't need a big space to practice. Rather, you should make it very simple, clean, and just make it very pleasant to live in, rather than making a room full of stuff. I saw a retreat cave of Master Xuanzang when he went to India in Nalanda, and if you were to remember the teachings of Vimalakirti, he also had his rooms very small, isn't it? If you were to remember at the beginning of it. And now let's look at Master Xuanzang's retreat.
纳兰陀虽然也是寺院，但更是大学。玄奘就是其中最著名的中国留学生。目前印度的许多古迹的确定理由之一，便是玄奘书的记载。我们来到了他那时的宿舍，他的房间不大，墙角有个洞，可容一人打坐。据说这是他的闭关之地。
这是玄奘法师的地方，他和其他的教授的待遇是一样的，房间也是单独的，他还有一个闭关的，里面刚好坐一个人闭关。 旁系大做黑闭关的一个闭关的一个地方，所以这个是个历史的遗迹。虽然这个地方很小，对中国文化和印度文化的影响非常之大。考证也是这样的，根据他的《大唐西游记》中间的很多记载，才发现这个地方考证的。他是一个划时代的一个伟大的僧人，我们也学习学。
好像他说的汉语是我们藏族人。
It sounds like his Chinese is just like how Tibetans speak Chinese. It's very thick in accent in terms of dialect. Whenever you have the opportunity to practice, I think you should seize all the opportunities and all kinds of conditions to practice diligently. And then, World Honored One, now we're all bound by the two obstructions, and as a consequence do not perceive the still, eternal nature of the mind. I only hope that Tathagata will take pity on us poor and destitute ones, the destitute sentient beings who had not attained the realization of the ultimate truth. At that time, Ananda realized that he has poor practice. So he stated that, please take pity upon us, the poor and destitute ones who did not realize the ultimate truth, and disclose the wonderful bright mind and open our Dharma, open our way eye. Over here, the way eye, way means Dharma. If you do not recognize the nature of mind, then it is just as how the way of a bodhisattva stated, all those who fail to understand the secret of mind, the greatest of all things, although they wish for joy and sorrow's end, will wander to no purpose uselessly. Therefore, Ananda supplicated to the Buddha in saying that you must give us a teaching of the true Dharma. And then from the character of one, which is the Savastika sign. In fact, this Buddhism Savastika sign is very much different than those of the Nazi sign in terms of the angle. And then this sign signifies myriad virtues on his chest. So from this character on the chest of the Tathagata, there are poured forth precious lights. Really brilliant and beautiful, amazing lights that then radiated and poured forth from this sign and radiated with hundreds of thousands of colors. The brilliant light then simultaneously pervaded everywhere throughout the 10 directions, to Buddha realms, as many as fine motes of dust. So we've already saw through this sutra, we already saw that the Buddha then radiated light from his crown, and then from his the center of his eyebrows, and from his face, and then over here is from the chest. It is said that in the Surangama Sutra, the Buddha then radiated lights for 5 times in this particular sutra. And that light simultaneously then pervaded everywhere throughout the 10 directions, to Buddha realms, as many as the fine motes of dust, anointing the crown of every Tathagata in all the jeweled Buddha lands of the 10 directions. Then it swept back to Ananda and all in the great assembly. So all the sentient beings, including Ananda, are all pervaded in such light. And said to Ananda, I will now erect the great Dharma banner for you. Ananda wanted to receive profound Dharma, but he hasn't received the the profound Dharma yet. So over here, the Buddha then started to give the profound teaching. He said that now I will erect the great Dharma banner. This is the inner Dharma banner, which means that which is to cause all living beings in the 10 directions to obtain the wondrous subtle secrets. The pure nature, the bright nature, the bright mind, and to attain the pure eye. At that time, when the Buddha gave the teaching of this profound Dharma, and then Ananda, as well as the sentient beings, attained or entered into the insights or the state of the understanding of the Dharma, the profound Dharma. So over here, we've already then studied till the part where there's the illumination of the light. And next year, I hope that we can continue to study this sutra. If we were to be still alive, and then maybe next year, around February or March, we will then continue with the later part of Surangama Sutra. I really hope that all of our audience would be there to listen to the next part of the teaching. I will make the announcements about 2 weeks or 1 week in advance to make such announcement of the restarting time of the classes, because right now I'm not completely certain about the time to resume class yet, because in between my winter holiday I will be translating. Lots of the Tibetan practitioners, that they would be retreating in winter. They would enter retreats in the summer, between summer till the fall time. They would go and get some yak butter, and they would get lots of barley as well, so that they can hoard up some food for themselves. And in spring, they will have time to practice again in retreat. So in the winter, when I have some time, I will then engage in translation work. And next year, I will give teachings. On one hand, I have to do my translation work. On the other hand, if I were to have some opportunities, I would give some teachings to different crowds of audience. Someone asked me in Switzerland, the translator at that time said that, could you please answer the question rather slowly, because I have to get all your answers. And I said that, no, I'm getting really hungry, therefore I have to speed up with my answers. So sometimes I really feel that I rather don't have lots of time when I go out and give teachings. On top of that, I am not in good condition in terms of my health, and therefore I really have to do some of the checkups and to maintain different parts of my body. Just as a broken car that's been used for a long period of time, I'm not sure how long this broken car would be in use or be functional for a long period of time. So we'll see. If this broken car could no longer be maintained, then maybe I'll change to another. Maybe it's a time to change it to a different car. So if our conditions would be favorable to us, I really hope to continue to give the teaching of this teaching, to finish the teaching, and I really hope that all of our audience would continue to listen to this teaching. At the same time, we should keep in mind that it is impermanent. We should keep that in heart. As Ponzo Rinpoche said,
时间人来讲，当然有时间的理想。然后
we have to have plans for the Dharma or for the ultimate level of the Dharma or the liberation aspect of our life. Of course, we have to feel impermanent about our relative life at the same time. Between the beginning of from the beginning of the teaching of Surangama Sutra till now, in fact, we've had classes for only about over a dozen of classes, and I really want to show gratitude to our translators, our crew of our streaming crew, as well as our audience, because if there's no audience, then I cannot give the teaching. Especially many people attended this class. Not only that you listen to this class, you attend this class very attentively. I can see that from your expression. During the time of the 7 attempts of searching for the mind, I saw that lots of you were very much confused and probably felt quite down because you didn't understand it. But I really felt your enthusiasm towards the learning of the Dharma. And upon noticing such kind of enthusiasm, it really touches me. If, as an audience, you do not have any kind of enthusiasm towards the learning of the Dharma or curiosity and towards the Dharma, then I won't have any kinds of enthusiasm myself to give teachings to it. So I am quite pleased to see those of you who attend this class, let you be in Larangar or online, or listening to this class online. When I read the Sutra of Surangama, I felt that if you were to read it by yourself, you won't be able to understand it. Therefore, you really need to have someone to give the teaching to it so that you'll be able to understand. Because the Surangama Sutra, even if you listen to the teaching, it is very difficult to understand. Don't even mention without anyone to give the teaching. In the sutra, it is stated that without someone to give you the teaching, without a good spiritual friend, you won't be able to get the genuine meaning and the profound meaning of the sutra. So I really feel that is very true, because there are lots of people who are of great wisdom, who are very smart, but they are not able to understand Surangama Sutra on their own, and they have to invest lots of time to study this sutra. Therefore, I think it is quite necessary to give the teaching and study together of this Surangama Sutra. If you do not study, then you won't be able to understand the profound meaning and profound teaching of the Dharma. Therefore, we are studying this profound teaching together, and I think this could be considered as one of the most meaningful and one of the most valuable and happiest moments of your life. So this year, the Surangama Sutra has come to a conclusion in this year, and we've already studied Vimalakirti Sutra for the first half of the year, and from the second half of the year we studied part of the Surangama Sutra, and I think it's been quite successful and went quite smoothly without lots of obstacles, and I think we should all rejoice with each other, especially we've studied the merit of listening to the sutra.